let's set the scene. It's August. It's a Sunday in August. The rest of the world is barbecuing.
Mm-hmm.
We are here.
Dog days of August.
It's the dog days of August. We are here, reliving flashback 80s weekend with Say Anything.
Yes, we are.
I'm so proud to be here with Ione Skye, Johnny Cusack.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And we have not been together since possibly the early 90s.
Is that true?
You think? The
Well,
three of
the
us
I've
three
seen
together?
of
I
us.
and I've seen you, but I
Yeah.
guess sitting all in the same room.
No.
No.
So
This is cool.
not only thanks for being here, but thanks for doing the movie, because I'm still so proud of it. And every time I see it, I just get the feeling that the whole intention of the movie was something personal that was real, and you guys made that happen. So before we actually get in and start watching the movie, I just want to set the scene a little bit on what the beginning of the story was. And it was, I had made this movie called The Wildlife, which followed Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and I was really disappointed because The Wildlife sort of didn't feel real. It was a teen movie in the way that I never wanted to, I never wanted to be a part of that kind of movie, you know, but it sort of took its own life on. And it just made me swear that the next thing would be from deep down inside. And I met James L. Brooks, who's a wonderful producer and incredible writer and director.
Where'd you meet him? How did you meet him?
I met him through a friend of mine, Penny Howland, and she said, Jim Brooks is researching a movie about broadcast journalism, and he wants to interview you. And he saw The Wildlife and thought it had some really great character stuff in it. And I was like, I want to meet him. So we went and we sat down and we had a really great
Is he still
talk.
on that same lot, like just down the street?
He still has that building right down the
there.
street
I
from where
passed
we
by
are.
and I got the flashback coming in.
And then,
And he has an office at Sony, and he is still that guy that's so passionate about characters. And we talked that day, and he said, you know what, let's do a movie together. And let's not put a timetable on it. Let's not do a deadline. Let's do a movie that you'll be really proud of, that'll come from you. And for years, we'd get together a couple times a week and just talk. Sometimes nothing would come of it. Sometimes I'd just be talking about, you know, my wife Nancy, or people that I knew, or things that had happened, and he'd stop me and he'd say, you should write that. I go, that? But that's my life. And he'd say, what better is there to write about? And that was the beginning of Say Anything. And slowly over time, it became a story about a golden girl, because I wanted to write a great girl character. And he said, well, let's work on that. So the movie originally was about a golden girl who was so smart that she knew the one guy who would love her best, the guy that nobody else believed in, was the one for her. And that guy ended up saving her life. That would be the choice that she made, which saved her life. And that was the beginning of Say Anything. But we couldn't get that guy. I couldn't capture who the guy was.
Did you still have at that time the relationship with the father? I mean, did you still have...
Yes, the father...
Was the father still what he was, what he turned out to be? Was it still that sort of...
Always.
Pandora's...
It was always a father that had a secret life.
and that's what ruined her life, so she knew who could save her life.
Right. His tragic error was that he included his daughter in the grand deception. So he corrupted the one relationship that meant most to him, his own daughter. And so now we have this guy, the guy that Diane Court believes in, and I couldn't crack it. I kept writing this guy who was sort of a vague version of me, and he wasn't worthy of Diane. And one day, this guy knocked on my door, and he had moved in down the street, and his name was Lowell Marchant.
His name was Lowell?
Lowell Marchant, and he had like a brush cut before it was ever in vogue at all. And he was from the South, and he said, "Hello, sir." And I mean, he wasn't that much younger than me, but he was calling me sir, and he said, "Hello, sir. I want to introduce myself. My name is Lowell Marchant. I live just down the street. I'm a kickboxer, and that is the sport of the future. I want you to know, are you into kickboxing?" I said, "No." He says, "ESPN features kickboxing. I'll come over soon whenever you wish me to come over, and we'll watch kickboxing together. But now this is just for me to introduce myself to you." And he wiped his hand on the side of his pants to shake my hand. And he kept knocking on my door day after day after day. And I was trying to write the script.
Fun.
And this guy was really entertaining, but he was bugging me. And one day I was talking to Jim Brooks, and I said, you know, this guy keeps bugging me, keeps knocking on my door. And he's got the greatest thing. He wipes his hand off. He's got this stoic, noble thing, but he's very polite. He wipes his hand on the side of his pants before he shakes your hand. And Jim is like, why aren't you writing that guy? I said, I don't know. I should be writing that guy. And from that moment on, Lloyd took life.
That's so cool, because Lloyd bothered Diane, like pestered her.
Yeah. And it's funny how mannerisms create a character.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Maguire sort of began with this guy I saw on a plane who was wiping his face, this businessman who was really tired, and the way he wiped his face, but created that character, the beginnings. But Lowell, who I always wanted to thank, and I only spoke to him once since the movie came out. He moved back south. But
Does he know?
He does know. I talked to him, and he was very honored.
I hope people believe him. Like if he says, you know, that's based on me. Like, yeah, right.
You wouldn't doubt it in a second.
Really?
He is the spirit of that guy. But we'll talk about how the collaboration with Johnny and our collaboration, you know, over Diane, how the characters changed. But just on a pure gift from above level, this guy knocked on my door talking about kickboxing. And that was the beginning of a character that was, in fact, more me than I could write myself. You know, he just wanted to belong. And I just want to say one thing before we start. There was like a defining moment with Lowell. He kept telling me, you got to come see me kickbox. I'm fighting this guy. I am going to have to fuck him up a little bit, man, because I am going to have to do it. I'm fighting at the Olympic Auditorium. Please come see me kickbox. And I couldn't come to see him. But I was aware that he was working out for this bout all the time because he worked on a bag that was right in the parking area right below where I worked. So I would hear Lowell working, like boom, boom, boom. And then one day I stopped hearing him work out, and I knew he'd had the fight, and I'd missed it. And I went downstairs, and he was sitting there, and he was battered. He'd been battered. And I said, how'd the fight go? And he said, very good. I almost won. And I will be back kickboxing soon. And he showed no signs of failure. He was just going to be an optimist no matter what. And that really solidified the soul of Say Anything in many ways. Just seeing him that day, battered to shit and unbowed. And so that's a little shout out to Lowell.
Shout out to Lowell.
Nice.
So, anything else you want to say before we start about like where your lives were at the time we started making the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's making so much sense. I was hanging out a lot with the Zappas at that time.
Yeah.
Because my mother was having a divorce, and their house was like way more fun than my house. So I was hanging out with the Zappas, and they kind of knew you, and Moon Zappa was telling me about you, and Dweezil, and how cool you were, and Nancy, and like, you know, and that you were doing this movie. And I don't know if my agency told me about it, but Moon said, you know, Cameron is coming over to hang out. And so that day I like specifically wore a certain dress that I thought, you know, would be nice, you know, and at the time it was like a Laura Ashley look going on. It was like so long ago, like flowery dresses. And she told me about you, like how you were really smart, and you know, left school early, and you were on the road for Rolling Stone with Led Zeppelin, and we were sort of talking about Fast Times, and how maybe because you left school early, you had more like an interest in like high school, and because you didn't really get to finish that properly, and
God, Moon, thank you.
yeah, she really
Setting me up.
And now when you're talking about it, makes sense that you were writing Diane, because it felt like there was that part, you know, of you in Diane, like the really smart kind of someone who's a little bit of an outsider, doesn't really know the value of being that smart, but, you know, and so when I met you, I was really excited. And then I just really worked hard on the audition.
Yeah.
Like so many of them, I just, just phoned it in or what, just sat. And this one, I really had like a determination. And there was like one point in one of the callbacks where someone, you or I don't know, Jim Brooks, or I think you were, saying just, it was like I was doing the graduation speech. But
Yeah,
like,
you
and
did
were
the speech.
saying, you said, just work on this some more and just, and I really did. And it was so cool. And then it was like this big mad search and you were kind of, starting to court. I think there were a couple auditions before and then you just were like focused on John.
I had seen you in River's Edge, and I thought, she is real. And you were 17, right? Maybe 16.
I was in River's Edge. I was 15.
15.
Yeah.
She was the star child.
That's real. She was the real star child.
She was the real star child.
But
she's striking in that.
it wasn't
Yeah, I remember when
amazing.
we came on board and you said, who do you get to play Diane Court? And Ione Skye. And I said, Ione Skye, that's the girl from River's Edge. And I went, yeah. Because you were just so striking in that film. And that film was really so striking.
I know.
And it was so real, that film.
Yeah.
So real, and you felt like a real Golden Girl, not a movie Golden Girl. But of course, somebody you'd see up on a screen and go, I'm lost in that girl. I want to know her. But there was reality, and not a reality based on TV or movies. It was, you'd already lived a life, it felt to me. And as soon as Jim, I remember Jim, who's so great with casting, came and saw you read, and you left the room, and he said, well, that's your girl.
Oh, how cool.
That's a Golden Girl. And then it was Lloyd.
Yeah.
How we find Lloyd. And I was always worried. I mean, I had you on my mind when I was writing it. But somehow I didn't think you'd do it. I thought that there might have been too many opportunities you had to play that age already.
Well,
and you might have wanted to move on.
I hadn't planned on doing it. Even when you met me, I saw sort of, I obviously thought the script was great. And I saw like hints of things that I thought could be a harbinger of great things to come. Like there's a scene that's not in the film where Lloyd's going to meet the parents for the first time and the in-laws. And he goes outside and just one of the women who's sitting there, who's sitting at the dinner table, is smoking a cigarette outside. And you'd be reading the script, and it was, these interesting characters. I didn't know where they were going. They were very real, but it was a high school milieu, and I was, I wanted to move on. But then you'd read these things in the script, like she'd have a cigarette, and she'd go, "How you doing?" He goes, "Fine, ma'am. How are you?" And she goes, "Well, I might not be doing so fine." I can't remember exactly what the line is. She goes, and you might not be doing so fine. For all I know, you might be molesting little boys. and then Lloyd comes back and he just says, that's a pretty intense thing to say, man. And so there was that harbinger of soul and depth and complexity and shadow underneath this what looked like a very sort of standard milieu. And of course, as the film progressed and the script progressed, and you saw the relationship with the father, you knew it was a lot heavier and deeper. But there were always those things that kept me going. But I just thought I'd done a film when I was 17, a Rob Reiner movie, and it was sort of like he was a young college freshman, and I was sort of looking to try to get into stuff like the Grifters, the Stephen Frears stuff. I was trying to move to those sort of more adult roles. But then we kept talking, and you were so passionate about it, and I thought, well, all right, if we're going to do this, let's do it. Let's really do it. And I sort of remember sort of throwing the gauntlet down to you on some level and saying, how aware do you want to make this character? This is a Reagan-era kid, isn't he?
Yeah.
So can he have optimism as a revolutionary concept, but be as aware as people in our era are, as the kids in River's Edge were? And is that possible? And you took that challenge as like kind of, and we turned it into our holy grail, which was a collaboration, if I remember it. But I remember at the beginning, I didn't want to do it because I don't know why I didn't. I guess for those reasons. But then once we started riffing together, I think it was inevitable.
you never had an ounce of bullshit about your point of view on life or the script. And I knew that you didn't want to go back and play younger because you'd already played older than 17, 18.
Which is
we made him 18.
When you're that age, it's more important than it is now.
Well,
because you want to be.
It isn't. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, you sort of want to
progress.
I don't know. You want to progress and have a straight line and play.
But ultimately, you're looking for depth, complexity, and you're looking for some poetry and stuff. And then, but when I realized that that's what you want to do, and when we sort of had the same. I don't know. We had the same film gods. We had the same literary gods.
True.
We prayed to the same altars of stuff.
I can't wait to talk about some of this stuff because I have such vivid memories of our collaboration as we watch the movie. But the one thing that I really, really always will remember is going to Chicago, knowing that you weren't sold on the idea, but you wanted to meet me. And this was my first time as a director, and it was my first hat-in-hand experience, and I was like, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to be cool, man. I'm going to be cool. I'm not going to beg. I'm going to lay it right out what the movie needs and what I need, and I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to beg. I'm a big fan of this guy. It's going to be great to meet him. Whatever happens will be fine. I met you in a restaurant, and I saw you before you saw me. And I saw you sitting there, and you had a bandana on your head. You had some sweat clothes on. You were fucking twice as big as I thought you were, just in terms of height.
Well, there's also, if I can, what I'd done right before that, I'd done this John Sayles movie called 8 Men Out.
That's
where I
right.
played a baseball player. Last day of filming, I severely tore my ankle. That was I think in the end of December. So for a whole Chicago winter, living in an apartment in Chicago,
I remember
I was
that.
sitting in
I
a
remember you
couch,
telling me
basically
that.
eating food and drinking beer. I couldn't move, couldn't work out, do anything. So I gained like 30 pounds too.
I remember
So not only was I big,
you
but I was
talking
fat.
about
To
that.
me, I don't remember fat. I just remember substantial. You looked big. You looked like a fucking kickboxer. And like all my cool drained away. I was like, this is Lloyd. I gotta have Lloyd. I gotta have Johnny. And I remember sitting down and I probably just begged shamelessly. And you
No, I don't. No,
you
didn't.
kind of invited me into your life a little bit, and I got to see your friends in Chicago and where you lived. And with every passing minute, I knew I needed that collaboration for Lloyd more.
Yeah.
I loved how you had your friends. I loved your self-sufficient life there. It just, it was a wonderful thing. And that was, you know.
I just kept remembering
the
every
beginning.
time I threw a challenge down, specifically about the character, and being very, very protective as to what I felt if I was going to do like a modern, 18-year-old kid or 18-year-old person, and we really wanted to try to make it have substance. The worst thing you can do when you do that is then to be false. If you're just doing a film that's about genre, plot, then it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to do poetry, and then you come false, you're screwed. So I remember every time I threw a challenge down to you, you were like, "All right," and I realized I couldn't get a no out of you. I couldn't get any. There was no. I kept saying, "Well, we got to do this, and we'd have to do this, and we'd have to work on. We'd really got to." And you were like, "That's what I want." I remember going home and going, "I don't know. I guess I got to do this."
You'd say, I think Lloyd listens to The Clash. And I'd be, yes.
I said, "Fuck."
Does Lloyd love The Who? Yes.
Good.
You say, I think Lloyd listens to Replacements. I'm like, yes. You say, do you love the Replacements? I've never heard of them. And you turned me on to the Replacements.
No,
I'd heard of them, but I'd never heard.
Listen.
I'd never really gotten into Let It Be and stuff like that. And but we'll talk about that and everything. But it was wonderful how you let the part kind of pursue you in a very creative way. And by the time you finally decided this was going to work, we already had some history of working on the part.
Yeah.
And it was very cool.
No, it would have been an unbelievable mistake not to do it.
Well, it took on its own life in many ways, and another thing I remember before I eat up your entire Sunday, do you remember us all getting together at the Formosa Cafe and you guys meeting for the first time?
No.
That
really?
kind of
At night?
interesting
Well,
shotgun marriage that's already occurred, where like
Was it
the
in
Golden
evening?
Girl meets
Yeah, no.
Lloyd for the first time,
No, I remember that. Yeah, we were in that back part of the Formosa.
and I was there with Nancy, and you were there with Anthony.
Oof, that's brutal.
And I was there with my bandana.
You were there
Oh
with
yeah,
your bandana.
I totally remember that now.
Do you?
When you walked in, yeah.
And we
I
were just, there was a lot
remember-
of looks across the
Yeah,
table.
well, because
and
also I think we had like a chemistry right away. So I think Anthony was a little bristly and I was like a little nervous.
But I would catch your eye, Ione, and you would look
Right.
at me. You would look at me like, yeah. And I would catch Johnny's eye, and he would look at me like, yeah.
I know, it's
Yeah.
awful. It's so fun because it really was like a setup.
But a beautiful blind date,
Oh yeah.
because instantly I just remember that joy of like looking across the table and going, ooh, it's not on the page anymore.
Oh, great.
Here's life. Here's life moving us to the next stage.
I
So,
remember that now.
Anyway, maybe on that note, we should start watching the movie.
Okay.
Let's do it.